is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Welcome to the MorganMan Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Morgan. Here on the MorganMan Sports Podcast, we talk Atlanta Falcons news, pre-game predictions, and all other news surrounding the Atlanta Falcons.
Touchdown, Atlanta!
Also on the podcast, we talk Call of Duty League, Esports, covering Roster Mania, major predictions, COD champs, player trades, and much more to get you ready for every single CDL weekend.
Scuff goes through, and Scuff snaps, wins the one-on-one in OpTic with the reverse sweep.
If that sounds good with you, put on your Falcons jersey, grab your gaming headset, and let's get this show started. What is going on, you guys? I'm your host, Stacy Morgan, and you are listening to the MorganMan Sports Podcast here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about the Atlanta FaZe with their lackluster performance at the Minor 2 tournaments against the Vancouver Surge, and we are talking about the Atlanta FaZe this weekend going into their series against the Minnesota Rokkr and the Boston Breach. So without any further delay, let's go get straight into today's action. All right, guys, so the Atlanta FaZe is coming off kind of a disappointing loss right here, I would say, against the Vancouver Surge. Like, the Surge is Atlanta FaZe's kryptonite, if you will say. And I don't know what it is. Like, Surge could be at the bottom of the league, not win a single series, but going up against Atlanta FaZe, boom, they are just dominating the scene left and right against these guys. Like how is FaZe losing the Surge? Now, granted, yes, Surge has definitely been on a roll here lately. You know, they've had a roster change, and, you know, they've been pretty much near about undefeated up until the finals for the Minor 2 tournament. So, definitely congrats to Vancouver Surge for improving, but FaZe, come on, man. Y'all are supposed to be the juggernauts, the titans of the Call of Duty League, especially in the Treyarch title, and you're losing the Surge. Now, granted, yes, this is your first tournament loss of the year, so I'm not overly worried just right now, but gotta bounce back. Gotta bounce back this weekend and next weekend in the last 2 weeks of the qualifiers in order to secure that Major 2 tournament victory win and, you know, show the Los Angeles Thieves, hey, look, you had an easy bracket, we didn't, and we're here to prove everybody wrong yet again by winning the Major 2 tournament. So, like I said, I'm a little disappointed, but at the same time, this is just the first tournament loss of the year for the boys in the red and black. So I think we can get past it. So for current CDL point standings right now, Atlanta FaZe is still at number 1 with 190 CDL points, but the Los Angeles Thieves are just 5 CDL points right in behind them, then at 185. Carolina Royal Ravens is third with 145, Toronto Ultra with 120. Then at 4th, Vancouver Surge at 5th with 90. 6th is Minnesota Rokkr with 90. Miami Heretics sitting at 7 with 90. And finally, for the playoff qualification cutoff, OpTic Texas sitting at 85 with 8th place overall. So if the playoffs started today, that is your top 8 going into COD champs. And out of that whole bracket right there, it's really unpredictable who's going to win. The whole COD champs, let alone the Esports World Cup. Atlanta FaZe still looks dominant. Los Angeles Thieves are finally building momentum. Ravens, though, I could see falling off just a little bit, but not too much. Ultra probably going to be staying in the top 5. Vancouver Surge, definitely top 5, but then after that, OpTic Texas, if they don't turn things around with Pred being back on the roster, they might have to resort back to Hook coming back. So that is for another subject on another day's podcast. So this weekend right here, ladies and gentlemen, the Atlanta FaZe has got somewhat of an easy schedule. And next week they do too, but of course I'm for next week's podcast episode. But Atlanta FaZe does take on the Minnesota Rokkr, which yet again, they are sitting at 6 overall in the CDL point standings. So the Rokkr, it's a coin flip with them. Some weeks they're hot, some weeks they're cold. But coming off their past weekend right here, losing the Cloud9 New York in a 3-2 does give me a little bit more confidence. I mean, yes, Rokkr did play Cloud9 to the best of their abilities. So don't get me wrong with that. But still, though, Cloud9 New York being a bottom of the barrel team at 10th overall in current CDL point standings, not a good look for the Minnesota Rokkr. I mean, if you're going to lose, at least lose like Atlanta FaZe against the Vancouver Surge that's in that top 5 with CDL points. So if I would have to predict this weekend's matchup against the Minnesota Rokkr for Atlanta FaZe, I will obviously pick Atlanta FaZe, but I think it's going to come down to a 3-2. Rokkr is looking for revenge, and they got, just redemption on their mind, as well as Atlanta FaZe. But Atlanta FaZe has got the talent over Minnesota Rokkr. Now, going up against the Boston Breach, that will be the main event on Sunday, March 9th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Now, the Boston Breach, ladies and gentlemen, again, they are a toss-up team, but they are sitting at 9th overall in CDL point standings with 70 CDL points, a 7-8 win-loss ratio. And guys, the Boston Breach should be a breeze right here for Atlanta FaZe. But unfortunately, no one hits Atlanta FaZe. I think Boston Breach does get a search and destroy on FaZe at least, so this will come down to a 3-1, obviously. But I think for some reason Boston Breach will get a search and destroy victory over Atlanta FaZe. I think Atlanta FaZe has still got the respawns down pat. Yes, could still use some improvements, but they're hopping on the hard point and they're winning their 1v1s. So definitely that does help for Atlanta FaZe. But for some reason, something is telling me, the COD gods, I would say, is telling me that the Boston Breach is going to win Search and Destroy over Atlanta FaZe this weekend. So let's look over the stats right now for both these teams. So the Minnesota Rokkr, obviously Atlanta FaZe is statistically all within the top 5 right here, so we're not even going to really cover that right now with the Atlanta FaZe because, again, they're all in the top 5. But let's start off with the Minnesota Rokkr. So the Minnesota Rokkr is 5th in overall KD. No rank in the top 5 for hardpoint win percentage. But for hardpoint KD, they are 4th place. For hardpoint score, they are 2nd place. So they do top Atlanta FaZe in the hardpoint score. And for hardpoint score plus or minus, FaZe only leads in that category. It's sitting at 2nd place. Rokkr does not make the top 5. For Search and Destroy round win percentage, Atlanta FaZe does top in Minnesota Rokkr at a 57.7%, while Rokkr is sitting at 4th place with a 55.6%. Search Destroy KD, no top 5 for Minnesota Rokkr, let alone a Search Destroy round win. But now Search Destroy round plus or minus, Rokkr does barely just crack the top 5 with a .07 plus round win percentage. For control map win percentage, Rokkr is 5th place in the CDL with 55.6. Control KD is a 1.03 at 4th place, just behind the Ravens, and 2nd place behind Atlanta FaZe. For round wins, Minnesota Rokkr is 4th with a 2.28 round win percentage. And for control round plus or minus, the Rokkr does sit in 4th place with a .39. Now moving on over to the Boston Breach, ladies and gentlemen. So Boston Breach, from a quick overview, really don't crack the top 5, except for maybe in 2 or 3 categories right here. And for those categories, ladies and gentlemen, that does not come in Search and Destroy. I will go ahead and tell you this. All comes in hardpoint. For hardpoint score plus or minus, Breach does barely just crack it with a 3.33 plus or minus. And for hardpoint win percentage is a 55.6% at fourth place, just 2 spots behind the Atlanta FaZe, while they sit at second place with a 66.7% hardpoint win percentage. So, again, for some reason, I have this gut feeling that Boston Breach, despite them having a good win percentage in hardpoint, is going to get the advantage over Atlanta FaZe and dispose of a lot of their weaknesses and, mentality going into Search and Destroy, which would definitely be beneficial for the Los Angeles Thieves and, Toronto Ultra, OpTic Texas, etc. That is willing to go toe-to-toe with Atlanta FaZe and take down the Titans of the CDL. So, guys, I don't think this is going to be an easy weekend right here, but for at least against Minnesota Rokkr, it will be a little bit of a challenge. 3-2, I do think FaZe will do it. And how I believe they'll do it is Rokkr will go up 2-0, and then FaZe will just bounce right back into things like nothing never happened and, reverse sweep the Minnesota Rokkr. Now for Boston Breach, like I said, they're going to win that Surge Destroy, I do believe, so it would be tied 1-1, and the FaZe just ultimately dominates the scene right there against the boys in the green and win it 3-1. So that will, of course, then help them improve to stay number 1 overall in the CDL right now, ladies and gentlemen. And then you got to really depend on other teams to start beating the Los Angeles Thieves, and I just don't think that's going to happen. Not anytime soon right now. Because if you really want to look at the Los Angeles Thieves right now and their schedule, moving forward, they got the Vancouver Surge coming up this Friday, so it's a rematch of the Minor 2 tournament. So you're definitely rooting for Vancouver Surge to win over the Los Angeles Thieves, just right there instantly. But their next, really they don't have another tough opponent until OpTic Texas and Minnesota Rokkr. But that comes next week on March 14th and 15th with them. So if you're an Atlanta FaZe fan, you're really hoping that Vancouver Surge will ultimately do it this weekend against the Los Angeles Thieves and get their redemption. Yes, I know it's not for no grand prize or anything, but it does keep the LA Thieves away from Atlanta by claiming that number 1 spot. Because that number 1 spot right now is being held by Atlanta, again, by 5 CDL points. But if Vancouver Surge can ultimately do it, that knocks them back just a little bit further away from Atlanta FaZe, and FaZe has to win pretty much all their matches this weekend. So guys, what do you think? Do you think the Atlanta FaZe will pretty much sweep the entire board this weekend? Do you think it'll be tied 1 win and 1 loss? Or do you think this will be an 0-2 weekend for the boys in red and black, and we'll have to go back to the drawing board of what they did right during the minor and major 1 tournaments? But anyways, guys, I hope you did enjoy. If you did, make sure to like button wherever you are listening from: iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your preferred podcasts. But until then, Morgan, will catch you all later. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.